Hello and welcome back to Grave Chroniclers, where the buried truths of this world are exhumed one file at a time. Tonight's record comes from Madrid, a working-class apartment, a grieving family, and the only haunting in history that ended up in an official police report. Sworn, stamped, signed by men whose job is to never believe in ghosts. This is the Vallecas case. A séance interrupted, a girl who faded, a home that turned against the living. So dim the lights, lock the door, and let's begin. At 20 minutes to 3 in the morning, on November 27th, 1992, national police officers pulled up outside an apartment block in a working-class neighborhood of Madrid. They were expecting something ordinary, a break-in, a domestic dispute. Instead, they found an entire family standing outside in the cold, parents and children, some barely dressed, refusing to go back inside their own home. The officers went in. They knew nothing about the apartment, nothing about its history, nothing about the girl. What happened to them in there went into an official report of the Spanish National Police, typed, stamped, signed by the inspector. And in that report, hardened officers, men whose job is facts, described things they could not explain in language no police report had ever used. They called them phenomena. It remains the only report of its kind. Vallecas in 1990 was an ordinary working-class district on the southern edge of Madrid. Apartment blocks, corner bars, families who knew each other. In one of those apartments, at number 8 Calle Luis Marin, lived the Gutierrez family, Maximo and Concepcion, and their 4 children. The eldest was a teenage girl named Estefanía. She liked music. She read. By every account, she was a completely normal girl living a completely normal life. Until the spring of 1990. One of Estefanía's friends was grieving. Her boyfriend had been killed in a motorcycle accident, and the girls decided to do what teenagers have done in one form or another for over a century. They would try to contact him. They smuggled a Ouija board into school. During a break, they slipped into a bathroom, set the glass on the board, and began. Estefanía's younger sister stood guard at the door. It did not last long. A teacher burst in, furious, snatched the board, and snapped it in 2. And this is the moment the story turns. Because according to the girls who were in that bathroom, and they have repeated it for decades, when the board broke, a strand of grey smoke rose up from the glass. It drifted across the room, and it went into Estefanía's nose and mouth. You can believe that or not. What is not in dispute is what happened to her afterward. The change was almost immediate. Estefanía stopped sleeping. She began having seizures, sudden, violent convulsions that came out of nowhere. She saw figures, shadows in the hallway, shapes at the foot of her bed that called her by name. She woke, screaming. She told her family that the things she saw at night were getting closer, and that they wanted her. Her parents took her to doctors. The doctors ran tests and found nothing that explained the seizures. They suggested everything from stress to epilepsy, but no diagnosis stuck and no treatment worked. For more than a year, the family watched their daughter come apart, hospital visit by hospital visit, while medicine shrugged. In August 1991, Estefanía was admitted to the hospital one final time. She fell into convulsions, and she died. She was 17 years old. To this day, no official cause of death has ever fully satisfied anyone. The doctors could not explain it. The family certainly could not. A healthy teenage girl had wasted away in 18 months and died, and nobody could say why. And then, in the apartment on Calle Luis Marin, it began. Days after the funeral, knocking sounds started coming from Estefanía's empty bedroom. When her mother opened the door, the dead girl's belongings were scattered across the floor. Soon after, the family heard laughter in the hallway in the middle of the night. Not a child's laughter, an old man's. It escalated. Doors opened and closed on their own. Voices murmured from the empty bathroom. The temperature would plunge in one room and not the others. A crucifix on the wall was found upside down. The posters in Estefania's old room were found shredded, scratched downward as if by claws. And Concepcion began to hear something that broke her completely. Her dead daughter's voice, in a home her daughter no longer lived in. They were, by every account, sane, ordinary, working-class people with nothing to gain. They endured it for over a year, telling almost no one. Because who do you tell? Who do you call when your home turns against you? On the night of November 27th, 1992, at around 2 a.m, with the apartment in chaos around them, Maximo Gutierrez finally picked up the phone and called the only institution left. He called the police. Chief Inspector José Pedro Negri arrived with his officers expecting, at most, a disturbance. What they found was a family out in the night, too frightened to be in their own home. The officers entered the apartment cold. No briefing, no context, no idea of its history. Just professional men stepping into a stranger's flat at close to 3 a.m. And the apartment performed for them. From the balcony, which the officers confirmed was empty, came loud, violent banging. Then, in front of multiple officers, the door of a cabinet swung open by itself, in a motion the report would describe as sudden and completely unnatural. On a table, a brown stain spread from nowhere. A crucifix had been torn from its figure. Trained men stood in a small Madrid apartment in the middle of the night and watched the ordinary rules of the world quietly fail. These were not ghost hunters. These were national police, trained observers, professionally allergic to nonsense. They searched for wires, drafts, tricks, intruders. They found nothing. And when it was over, they did something no Spanish police unit had done before or has done since. They wrote it all down. In an official report, on official paper, stamped and filed, describing events with no rational explanation. The report did not say ghost. It did not say demon. It used a careful, extraordinary word. Phenomena. The police left, because there was nothing they could do. You cannot arrest a haunting. The Gutierrez family eventually did the only thing left. They sold the apartment and moved away. The activity, they say, stopped almost completely. The new owners of the flat on Calle Luis Marin have never reported a single strange thing, though one detail followed the family out. In November 1993, a framed photograph of Estefanía hanging in their new home caught fire. Only her face burned. The frame was untouched. Skeptics have offered explanations, and they deserve a hearing. Perhaps Estefanía had an undiagnosed neurological illness. Epilepsy can produce both seizures and hallucinations. Perhaps a shattered family, drowning in grief, began to see patterns in ordinary noises. Perhaps the media attention amplified everything. Maybe. But none of that explains the report. Officers with no context, no warning, and no reason to lie, who walked into that apartment as skeptics and walked out as witnesses. None of them ever retracted a word. The case later inspired the film Veronica, and the report itself, stamped, signed, official, still exists in the archives of the Spanish National Police, the only one of its kind. The Gutierrez family asked everyone for help. They asked the doctors, and the doctors had no answer. They asked the church, and the church had no answer. And finally, at 2 a.m, they asked the police, the one institution in modern life that deals only in what can be proven. And the police came, and looked, and wrote down the truth as they saw it. Phenomena. Unexplained. Estefanía Gutiérrez Lázaro was 17 years old. Whatever you believe took her, an illness, a grief, or something that came through a broken board in a school bathroom, she deserved more time than she got. Say her name, and maybe leave the board in the box. Subscribe to Grave Chroniclers. There is always another file the world would rather keep closed, and we will keep opening them. Until next time, some doors, once opened, never close.